I want to talk to you a little bit about something. Last week we were talking about how George Bush came out and attacked Ted Cruz. And I was thinking about it this weekend. I thought, there's got to be a reason for this. There's got to be a reason for this. It's more than just his brother. What is it that the Bushes would come out against Ted Cruz? Okay, so what you heard last week were people saying, well, it's because they know that Ted is the real conservative and Jeb. Is it? Is that what it is? George W. Bush, who has never attacked the sitting president, the same sitting Democratic, progressive, Marxist president who has made a career out of attacking and blaming him for everything nearly daily for 8 years now. He doesn't attack him, but he goes against Ted Cruz. Why? Bush reportedly shocked those intendants when he treated every other candidate with kindness. And with respect to Ted Cruz, he said, I just don't like the guy. Why? Again, coming from a guy who never attacks. I like George W. Bush. A guy who at one time employed Ted Cruz. Yes, his brother is running against Cruz for the same job. But again, Bush has had kind words for every other candidate. So what else could possibly be going on here? And then it dawned on us. Let me take you back to 1993. A typical warm, muggy, early summer night. Two teenage girls named Jennifer, 14, and Elizabeth, 16, had just left a friend's pool party. They had attended together. It's almost 11 o'clock at night. It was the time that their parents had said, curfew, be home by 11. The two of them had had so much fun that they lost track of time and they were now running a little late. They quickly said their goodbyes and headed home. They were a little nervous now. They knew they'd be in hot water when they got home. So they tried to save about 10 minutes on the walk home by taking a shortcut across some railroad tracks and then cutting across T.C. Jester Park. They hoped that they would make it home in time so they would not get in trouble. It turns out be the worst decision they could possibly have made, and the last decision either of them would ever make. As they walked along White Oak Bayou in the park, they happened upon a group of 6 young men. They were holding a gang initiation and drinking beer. Before the girls had time to react, they were immediately grabbed by the gangbangers, and they were thrown to the ground. They were tortured, repeatedly raped, strangled with a belt and shoelaces, and then, just to make sure that they were dead, had their throats stomped on by the gang members. When the gang's leader, Peter Cantu, and illegal alien member Jose Medellin finally made it back to Cantu's home that night, where he lived with his brother and sister-in-law, they were scratched up and covered in blood. Shocked at their appearance, the brother said, "What happened to you?" It was at this point Cantu and Medellin openly bragged about having fun, and they went on to describe the horrors of what they had just done. And after a couple of days of trying, Christina Cantu finally convinced her husband to call the police and tell them what his brother and fellow gang members had done. All of them that were involved were arrested. They were all tried, and they were all convicted. Medellin gave a written and videotaped confession of his role in the brutal rapes and murders. 5 years later, in 1998, Mexican national Jose Medellin had not informed police at the time of his arrest that he was a Mexican citizen living in Houston illegally. It was finally discovered. As he sat on death row, he realized the Mexican consulate might be able to help him. The consulate and Mexico filed a lawsuit on behalf of this animal. And in 2004, the International Court of Justice, citing a consulate treaty in the U.S. had signed onto, ordered hearings for Medellin and other illegal aliens on death row. Texas said, "I don't think so. This guy's a monster." Texas insisted that it adhered to the U.S. Constitution, the Texas state constitution, and the American Texas state justice systems, not the international courts of justice. Mexico and the International Court demanded a stay of execution in the hearings and the trials in Medellin's case. And amazingly, inconceivably, in 2005, George W. Bush steps in. and sides with Mexico and the International Court and orders that the hearings be held on his behalf. Frankly, it was at this moment that was my final straw with George W. Bush. It was this moment that I said, there's something wrong here. This guy is not who we think he is. This was my final straw. So Governor Rick Perry and Texas again said no to Bush in the International Court. And the Supreme case went, or the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. It became Medellin versus Texas. So what does this have to do with the comment of George W. Bush saying, I just don't like the guy? Arguing the case for the state of Texas and against the brutal killer, Mexico and the International Court and George W. Bush was a 37-year-old Solicitor General named Ted Cruz. This is one of the 9 cases that he argued in front of the Supreme Court. He won. Texas won. Justice won. The Supreme Court of the United States ruled that only the Congress of the United States had the right to order hearings to be held. In July 2008, the World Court ordered a stay of Medellin's execution. Governor of Texas, then Rick Perry, argued that the state of Texas is not bound to World Court rulings. In other words, screw you, World Court, we're Texas. On August 5th, 2008, after Rick Perry rejected last-ditch calls from Mexico and Washington, D.C. to stay the execution, this monster, Jose Medellin, finally paid for his crimes, having survived 15 years longer than his 2 innocent teenage victims. In fact, the 15 years between the time he brutally tortured, raped, and killed those girls was a year longer than Jennifer Ertman's entire life. But along with Rick Perry, it was Ted Cruz who saw that it was justice that was served. Against the full frontal efforts and attacks of George W. Bush. So is this possibly one of the reasons why George Bush says, I just don't like that guy? Is that a reason? I don't know. But I do know this. It's one of the reasons I love Ted Cruz. And one very big reason that I first said, George Bush, I really don't like that guy.